Tell me about, doing this.
The first week I was not here. I was out at that point. I started probably 2 weeks into this process.
Okay.
So I was a little bit behind on what was going on, kind of getting out of vacation mode at that point. They called me in to do this work, and so I started looking at some other deaf interpreters that were working locally. We have two others, Courtney Westman and Kyle Contreras, that work locally as deaf interpreters. So I watched their work first, and I started picking up on what they were doing, getting some of the vocabulary, what was going on, and then I picked up the process from there.
I mean, what do you think about the subject matter and what you're doing right now? I mean, is this different from what you've done in the past just because of what you're talking about?
Yes, this is a pandemic, so this is happening all over the world right now. For me as an interpreter, typically I sit down, it's more of a consecutive process when I'm interpreting, maybe an interview process or at a doctor's appointment, one-on-one. So right now this is worldwide, everybody knows what's going on right now. So yes, the process and the experience is very new and different.
And why do you think this is so important for anybody who's watching you?
For some people, English is their second language, so it's very difficult for them to read the captioning on TV. It's really nice to have an interpreter on camera for them to access the information in their native language. And that way they don't have to try and talk to their family or friends to catch up on information that's already been stated. Some people are able to access the captioning, which is awesome, but it is really hard to have sound off and just read caption and keep up with the pace that this is being stated at. So it's nice to have this on top of that so people can access it in their native language.
And so explain to our audience how you do what you do, because you're not looking at them. Oh, let me back up a second. Can you hear anything I'm saying right now?
No.
Nothing.
I am profoundly deaf.
You can't hear a thing.
Nothing.
And you can't hear the people who are speaking as well.
No, I cannot.
So people are going to say, how in the heck do you do that?
Absolutely. We do have a hearing interpreter. We work together as a team. And so they are what we call feeding the information to me. And I take that information and I put it out in an accessible way to the people that are accessing this information. So we have deaf people all over the community, all over the state right now that are relying on this. And what I'm doing is making this message more culturally appropriate to them. And I use my facial expressions, my body, all of that as part of the grammar, the structure of ASL. And so that's what I'm doing based off the information that the interpreters are giving me. I am making it culturally appropriate and accessible to the people throughout the state.
And maybe you just answered my question, but my wife asked me, she goes, well, why do they make the faces and all that? Explain why you do that.
Yes, so this is part of our language. It is part of the grammar of ASL and makes it very easy for people to understand, to hear the voice, the intonation, the inflection, all of that we hear that is put on the face in the language for people to access. If people do not have facial expressions, it's kind of like somebody talking monotone. And so by adding facial expressions, you can show the intensity of a message by telling somebody to, hey, knock it off, or hey, knock it off.
Right.
And so that intensity in the voice that you hear is shown on the face. And in this process right now, everything is being said so rapidly too, that when information is given to me, we are trying to include both all the details that are being said so we are as accurate as possible, but also matching the register. This is a very formal message that is being presented, and that also needs to be portrayed in our interpretation. And the interpreter's lagging here because we're trying to catch up and put my message in ASL out in English.
I was going to ask that. How do you keep up with the speed of what people are saying?
So the interpreters have what we call a lag time. They're about 5 to 10 seconds behind the message given, but then when they give it to me, I'm even farther behind. And so we are trying to take that information and get it out as quick as possible, at the same time as accurate as possible. But it is a challenge to constantly keep up with the rapid pace that they fire the information out at.
And it just goes from you look at her or whoever, and it goes back to you, and then it goes out. Right.
Yes. I'm watching the interpreters giving me the information, and then I look at the camera and I sign it.
So I've seen you on TV as well at other news conferences, and it seems like you're out there the main person doing this. Why are you doing all of this compared to maybe these guys?
We do have a lot of hearing interpreters that work in the community that do a lot of the work. However, we do have some trained and qualified interpreters that have been to school specifically for this, and so the experience that I bring to the table helps me make this more accurate and culturally appropriate for the people accessing this. I'm able to come in and work as a professional in this environment, and having a consistent person makes the information given to the community as consistent for them as possible. It helps improve the accuracy because I know the information that has been said days and weeks before.
So when I was talking to you guys the other day, you guys were explaining to me that because you're deaf, that maybe how you're signing is maybe better interpreted by the hearing impaired community. Do you remember that conversation, or can you explain kind of that if you understand that question?
It's not necessarily that one person signs better than another. This is all a team approach right now. What I'm doing as a deaf professional, a language specialist, is taking that information and giving it as accurate as possible. As a deaf individual, I can't do this without my hearing team, so I do rely on my hearing interpreters. It's not that I'm better than them at all, but this is my culture, this is my language, and I'm able to intuitively know how to make those interpretations to make it as accurate as possible, taking some of these concepts that are being given simultaneously and making it as accurate as possible. So it's not that one is better than another. I'm just bringing a more specialization to the process.
And can you tell me about your hearing loss history?
I was born deaf. Both of my parents are deaf, and I have 4 children that are deaf, so our family is third generational deaf.
Wow, that's kind of shocking to hear.
Yeah.
Wow.
So this is my native language. I went to a school for the deaf where everybody there signed, teachers, students, principals, everybody, so I was fully immersed in this language. When people see me on the news now, they are able to access this in their culture, their language, and they have that trust in me because this is my language, my culture, and my history.
Can I ask how old your kids are?
Oh gosh, I have to remember their ages
Me
now.
too.
11, 7, 5, I think, or 6, 5 and 3, or 6 and 4. Maybe, I'm not sure. Well, I'm not.
That's okay. I put you
Okay,
on
let
the
me
spot
try.
there. I would
Let me
probably-
try.
any
My
given
wife
day,
would
I
be
wouldn't
pissed off
know
if she
either.
watched this. If this airs, let me see. Let me try this again.
Go ahead.
11, 8, 6, and 4.
And this might be a dumb question, but what's the reason that you're all deaf? Is it hereditary? I don't understand that.
It is. It's hereditary. It just happens. Yeah, we are born and they identify us as deaf, and our whole family. Yeah.
Wow. Can I ask? It's hard for me to comprehend that. I guess how do you comprehend? Now, you've never heard really anything. You hear vibrations, you've told me. Can you try to explain what that's like to people?
Sure. So for example, I don't have an alarm to wake me up in the morning. I have a vibrating device that's under my mattress that will vibrate the mattress to help me wake up. I can feel like a truck engine driving by. I feel vibrations from that. A lot of hearing people do rely on their auditory ability to rely on sound, but as deaf individuals, we have a higher sensitivity of feel and touch, so we hone in on the vibrations.
Can I ask you to, and again, if I'm asking something too personal, let me know. What do you tell your kids about
No problem.
living, being deaf in a world where a lot of us rely on hearing?
You know, I was born as a deaf individual to deaf parents, so naturally they signed to me, and just like my kids, I have brothers and sisters that are deaf. So this was just a natural way for us to pick up the language, pick up the world, just like hearing families do too. They just, they interact with hearing people, they talk to people every day, in the store, wherever they go, and it's just something that they're used to. And we live in a hearing world, so it's just something that I have become accustomed to. Some people can feel like it is isolating to be somebody that can't communicate with everybody around them, but it's something that doesn't bother me. I'm very used to it. I already know that I have my own world, essentially, with friends, family, everybody that supports each other, communicates to each other. We have our own culture. And I know that when I meet somebody that doesn't know sign language, I have my own way to communicate with them, writing back and forth, whatever. So interacting in a hearing world doesn't bother me at all. So when I raise my kids, that's the approach I take in teaching them. They have friends and families that sign, so they're able to interact with them. So they have a deaf world, a deaf community, but we also live in a hearing world, and so they take just those ways of communicating and learn how to communicate with people that don't know sign language by gesturing, by writing back and forth, and they've become accustomed to that.
Why is this important for you? Was there anything in your life where you said, I want to do what I'm doing right now?
Yeah, it's kind of a funny story, actually. When I went to college, I wanted to major in deaf ed, become a teacher. I went to Boise State University, and I had 2 interpreters in that class that were sitting in front of the classroom, and there was there's another deaf student that was from another country, but they came to this school, Boise State University, and our professor was up there, and we were accessing it through an interpreter, and somebody sitting next to me, the other student, didn't understand what the interpreter was signing, and they would tap me and ask me what they were signing, and so I would take what I got from the interpreter and I would expand on that, and I would re-sign it, reinterpret it to the student. And the interpreters looked at me and said, hey, that is what a DI does, that's what a deaf interpreter does. And so, hey, you should pursue this. And Idaho State University has an interpreting training program, and they told me about it, and they said you can take some training and become a deaf interpreter, and something I had never thought about before, but it was them reaching out to me, and they contacted me, asked if I wanted to join the program, and so contacted the program coordinator and asked if I could join the program. They accepted me right away, and I changed my major from deaf education to be a deaf interpreter.
Wow. So how long have you been doing this?
Well, I recently graduated last year, 2019, so going on a year and a half.
Oh, not very long.
Yeah, and that was including my internship, working experience, and all of that. There's, so you go through your training program first, and then you take your national certification test. So we do have a lot of people in the lower 48 that are nationally certified. I haven't taken my certification test yet, but that is next.
Okay. And do you plan to do this for the rest of your life as a career?
I would love to, yeah, for the rest of my life. It is something that I really enjoy doing, and I'm fascinated with this work. I do this right now as my side job.
Oh, what's your other job?
I work for the Alaska State School for the Deaf,
Mhm.
and I was working on getting my teacher certification,
Oh, okay.
and that's in the work right now, and also in the process of getting my master's in
Wow.
deaf ed.
How many hearing impaired people are there in Alaska?
Whew.
Hard to say?
That's a good question. I
Yeah.
think I'm the wrong person to answer that. I'm going to look to the two interpreters here and see if they know the answer to that. They don't really have an answer.
Okay. What do you think is important for all of us to know about what you do and what's happening right now?
I think it's important for deaf people to feel heard and feel understood. Deaf people will access and acquire more information by using a deaf interpreter like myself. We have some very qualified interpreters that work here currently, but when they see a deaf individual, somebody that is from their own culture, uses their native language up front, and that's who they're getting the information from, like myself. I worked with many hearing interpreters through school with appointments and all of that, and then when I was in high school, that was the first time that I saw a deaf interpreter, and I just felt an immediate connection to that person because it was their native language as well, their natural fluidity of the language, their culture and all of that. There was just an immediate trust and connection, and the information that you receive from a hearing interpreter versus a deaf interpreter is the same. However, that cultural connection is stronger with a deaf interpreter.
So it sounds like what you can really add to this being up here.
Exactly, yeah, because I'm up here as a deaf individual getting this information as well, and so they know that I'm one of them, and when I see this information, they can't access it through interpreting through other hearing interpreters, but when they see me on camera, there's just that automatic connection.
So is it like maybe two native Spanish speakers talking to each other as opposed to speaking to fourth-year college students who speak Spanish?
Yes, that's a prime example.
Okay. What else would he like to add that he would like people to know?
I just hope more deaf interpreters will be recognized and that our community will grow and the appreciation will grow as well. We've gotten a lot of feedback from the deaf community just thanking us for being here, providing that access, and we do need more of that locally. So I just hope more agencies locally will use deaf interpreters and just recognize that the accuracy of this information is vital right now, and we do need people that are qualified, that have experience, and at the same time just fostering our community and bringing up people that have a passion for pursuing this profession.
What do are your kids watching, and what do they say about what Dad's doing?
Every time I get home from doing this, they're like, "Hey Dad, I saw you on TV." My wife always has the Facebook Live link on her phone, and she always compliments me every time I get home too, so that's awesome. So, yeah.
I would imagine you feel good about this. I mean, because what you're doing is is so incredibly important right now.
Absolutely. For this virus specifically, yes. I've had a lot of local community members sending me direct messages thanking me, saying they just feel like they have that equal access, and having my kids see this information too. And if I received the feedback that, getting the feedback that I've received from the community has given me the confidence to keep going with this.
Your kids, when your kids watch, they're obviously seeing things that can scare kids. What do you tell them about that?
get home and I tell them, you know, this is not something we need to freak out about right now. Just follow the recommendations, stay 6 feet away from each other. We're going to wash everything in our house constantly. I mean, they're kids, right? But we have to constantly be keeping on them. Wash their hands all the time.
Yeah, okay. All right, thank you. Thank you. Is this right?